Well, he got right that the origin of cancer involves disruption of oxidative phosphorylation. He got right the fact that in order to stay alive, the cell needs to find an alternative energy source, and that alternative energy source is fermentation. So this is very interesting because cells, many cells will be subjected. What Warburg clearly said is that if oxidation, energy using oxygen, is acutely damaged, it will kill the cell, just like I said to cyanide. Cyanide will kill cells massively fast. Okay, if you kill a cell, it can never become a cancer cell. So the origin of cancer has to be a chronic interruption of energy through oxygen, oxidative phosphorylation. It can't be acute. So Warburg was 100% correct about that. He says if you damage this system too acutely, you'll kill the cell, and a dead cell can never become a cancer cell. So the damage to this respiration has to be chronic. And it has to be chronic because it requires the cell to form an alternative. It has to be able to upregulate alternative form of energy to replace the lost energy from oxidative phosphorylation, which is fermentation. So there's only two forms of energy that we know about in cells. One is oxidative phosphorylation, which is the use of oxygen. We breathe, all cells, majority, they're not the red blood cells, but most of the cells in our body will be using oxygen for energy and producing water and CO2. So every time we exhale, we blow out CO2 and water, moisture, and those are the waste products of oxidative phosphorylation. And it's highly efficient. So it allows our cells to do all kinds of unique functions. Brain cells, liver cells, colon cells, they all do their own specific function. They're all using oxidative phosphorylation. And what happens then is in order to get cancer, you have to have a cell that can transition from oxidative phosphorylation to the ancient pathway of fermentation. And if, as I said, if it happens too quickly, the cell will die. But if it happens chronically, the cell then has an opportunity, exactly like Warburg said, to shift away from oxidative phosphorylation and rely more on the substrate level phosphorylation. This is the transition from one source of energy to a second source of energy. But you have to also realize that the organelle inside the cell that's responsible for oxidative phosphorylation is the mitochondria. And the same organelle that allows us to generate energy very efficiently also regulates the cell cycle. The cell is stabilized in we call a differentiated state. It's stable, not growing, and it's doing its metabolically designed activities. Well, why? Because the organelle that controls all this, the mitochondria, is operational. When that organelle loses gradually its capability of maintaining energy and the cell slowly forces into fermentation, the very organelle that controls the differentiated state loses that control and the cells fall back on proliferation, which is what the cell would normally do if it weren't appropriately regulated by the mitochondria. So the mitochondria controls the cell cycle, and when that organelle becomes defective, you get two things. The cell is fermenting and proliferating at the same time, and it happens slowly, gradually. And as the waste products of fermentation are lactic acid and succinic acid, acidification of the microenvironment, which then feeds back further damaging oxidative phosphorylation, and you get this situation called an escalating situation of biological chaos, leading to a dysregulated cell growth, a change in the microenvironment, which then feeds forward to continue this abnormal growth. And by the time you see it, it has already established a microenvironment. Now you begin to see something, because for a long time that would be completely go unnoticed, either by the patient or by any what we call scanning, screening, any of these things. You see something by scanning and screening that's already a well-established, developed growth. Whether that growth is metastatic or not metastatic, whether it's malignant or benign, that all can happen. But all of that happens on this transition from oxidative phosphorylation to fermentation. And the type of cell that's involved with this determines whether or not that growth will be malignant or benign. And that can be, that also has to come into the question. But in cancer, we're always concerned with the malignant aspect of this growth.